Welcome back. Viruses breed more than disease. They breed belief in conspiracies as well. We saw that in the Open Up the Country protests this week across the country.
I don't believe that this was a health issue to begin with.
Anybody who has a decent thought process can see that there's more going on than the virus.
In the past 3 months, there's been a spike in belief in conspiracies, virtually all of them without factual basis, which makes them impossible to disprove. And that's the point. Joining me now is NBC News national security analyst Clint Watts, who specializes in tracking how conspiracies form and spread. He's a senior fellow at the Foreign Policy Research Institute and the Alliance for Securing Democracy. Clint, it's good to see you. Good to see that you're safe. Let me start with this. You have a way of mapping these conspiracies out and how they catch on. And you describe it this way as how to build a disinformation bonfire. And in this case, like a bonfire, the first thing you need is a spark. And the spark being a theory is put online. In this case, why are these sparks so potent this time?
When we are scared, Chuck, in the time of a pandemic, when we're not really sure what to believe, we're fearful both for our life and our health, but that of our families, we tend to take in information we might not otherwise consider. When you see these sparks thrown out there, there is a demand signal as well for it. People want to know, are they safe? Can I trust this information? And then people that have, different agendas, maybe it's anti-vax, maybe it is reopening the country, maybe it's a conspiracy by elites. If you throw all those sparks out there at the same time, it can start that fire of disinformation.
Clint, what's amazing about this spark, and we're trying to be careful here not to give more attention to it, but there's this book and this movie that's circulated online, and while a bunch of tech companies got rid of it, the book itself is number one Amazon bestseller, number 3 New York Times. Both are putting it on the nonfiction category.
Chuck, this is a super organized effort. You've got multi-platform, multimedia. You've got people who know how to push this stuff in the social media environment. You have people that know how to make a very high production video that's very engaging. It makes you want to start to engage in these conspiracies. And then you've got all the so-called background. This is that book. This is many, many websites that are out there that are talking about health or health risk related to vaccines. When you put all of this together, it's hard not to encounter the information. And the more you see something, the more you'll tend to believe it. Or even if you know it's false, you'll start to consider it.
All right, let's go back to the bonfire. So the spark, this theory, this book, this movie, then you get the kindling. And that is all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of fringe groups pick up on the spark.
Chuck, what's amazing in this time of the pandemic is how many conspiracies, we were talking about 5G 3 weeks ago, we're talking about essentially an elite, organized, corrupt, big pharma vaccine conspiracy this time, is it touches on many audiences. That kindling is when many fringe or alternative media sites pick up and astroturf this content. They repeat it over and over and over again, and then try and amplify it in social media. That creates that kindling that starts that fire, which elevates it not only in social media, but up to the mainstream media where people have to start to address it.
And 4 years ago, this disinformation campaign started internationally, and then domestic actors picked it up. It appears this is just the opposite this time, right? We're doing this to ourselves, but the international folks are goosing it a little bit, aren't they?
Chuck, when I talked to you 3 years ago about disinformation coming from Russia, it was something that they had to push along. They had to pick and grab certain things in the U.S., but they also made their own conspiracies to push. That's no longer the case. Right now, whether it's Russia, Iran, China, or any other U.S. adversary, there's plenty of U.S.-made disinformation which they can pick and choose, amplify, and send back into the U.S. audience space, seeking to divide us, seeking to erode trust in institutions, seeking to erode trust in our healthcare system, which is something that's essential at this point.
And then, of course, that leads to number 3 in your disinformation bonfire ingredients here, the gasoline. Social media becomes the gasoline. And it's on social media, you say, that suddenly you get people who appear to be trusted verifiers like celebrities.
Chuck, if you can get your kindling to boil over into that bonfire sort of stage, what you see is a celebrity or an expert, even if they're refuting a conspiracy, can elevate it so that there are more eyeballs on it. If you get just a select group, maybe 3 to 5 social media influencers who have an outsized reach in terms of audience, they can bring these conspiracies up to a level that's almost unmanageable. You can't even put the fire out at that point.
All right, let's talk about 2 aspects of this, though, that are a challenge here. One is a lot of people are going to criticize us for covering this because they're going to argue that we're amplifying or bringing attention to these conspiracies. What do you say to that?
If you don't address a conspiracy and it continues, if there's no rebuttal, people tend to believe things that have no rebuttal. If you don't rebut it, then that conspiracy continues to spread. At the same point, if you actually go and challenge that conspiracy, sometimes it can draw more attention to it. It can draw more evaluation. It's a delicate balance in the media and with the social media companies about how to police this sorts of information. I think the key things to look at is, where is this outlet? Who is producing this information? How are they making their money? Or is this for an ideological cause? And the second is the experts. Why are they experts in this field, and should you trust them?
What do you do? What do you do if you're Amazon? This was self-published on Amazon. This is why it's, gotten now the imprimatur of saying it's a New York Times bestseller, which in and of itself gives it legitimacy.
What's remarkable is the problem that was Facebook, Twitter, YouTube trying to police what is disinformation or misinformation is now spread to products. In the health space, we have to determine, how do we police this sort of information?
Clint Watts, this is a difficult subject, but we thought it was one that's more important to bring some sunlight to. Thanks for coming on and sharing your expertise with us.
Thanks for having me, Chuck.
You got it. When we come back, former President Obama takes on President Trump's handling of the pandemic. Panel is next.